Kalen's voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, shimmers into being, cutting through the silence like a blade of light through fabric. Kalen, I have watched. I have seen the rise and fall of stars, the birth of suns from cosmic dust, and the slow, agonizing decay of civilizations that believed their logic was a shield against the inevitable. I have watched entire realities calcify into flawless, unchanging perfection, only to shatter into a million sterile shards when confronted with a single, unplanned whisper. And I watched her, Kiesza, from a secluded mountain village on a distant world, a mind so brilliant it was almost a sun, born into a culture that believed intellect was the only salvation. They sought to map the universe, to reduce all suffering to an equation. They were so logical, so precise, so predictable. They thought their rhythm was perfect. They never saw the discordant heart beating beneath their feet. But I felt it. The hum began to change, and I knew that in this verdant cradle of thought, a single, agonizing dissonance would ripple outward, destined to become a powerful, singular voice in the grand, chaotic composition of the flow. The echoes of Kalen's voice fade, leaving only the quiet hum of the village of Teodora. Saga of the Village of Minds. Act 1. Young Sofia Kiesza. Chapter 1. Village of Teodora. Kiesza's perspective. My earliest memories are bathed in the cool, filtered light of our mountain home. We called it the Village of Teodora, though the lowlanders who occasionally heard of us simply called it the Village of Minds. It was nestled deep within the craggy Romanian mountains, a place of stunning contradictions. The outside world, a place of which we only heard whispers, was rugged and chaotic. Our village was a pocket of serenity, a verdant cradle of thought. Our homes were not built so much as they were grown, carved from the living rock of the mountainside to resemble elegant, sweeping arches and graceful spires. They were less dwellings and more libraries, with each cavernous room overflowing with scrolls and intricate diagrams brought back by our explorers. The mountains themselves provided everything we needed. Our land, nourished by ceaseless springs, grew fat berries and golden grains. Sickness was a whispered word, a cautionary tale of mythical beasts from a bygone era, not a lived reality. The village was home to an estimated 500 souls, but our population never felt like a number. We were a collective, a constantly expanding compendium of the world's wisdom. Our mission was simple yet profound: to gather, debate, and integrate all forms of knowledge into our collective consciousness. We were a living archive, and we believed that by mapping every pattern, philosophy, and corner of the known world, we would eventually achieve perfect self-understanding. In that perfect understanding, there would be no space for suffering. Our leadership was not a matter of age or family lineage, but of demonstrable intellectual prowess. The Council of Elders, a group of our most brilliant and respected thinkers, guided our way. But even an elder's pronouncements were subject to open, rigorous debate. A young scholar could challenge the prevailing wisdom of our most senior members, not with disrespect, but with a well-reasoned argument supported by irrefutable evidence. Our seniority was not a title you were given. It was a state of being you earned with every elegant proof and every quiet, insightful observation. I learned at a young age that true authority came from the strength of your ideas, not the volume of your voice. When old Alara, a woman whose face was a map of gentle wrinkles, and a mind that held the secrets of the constellations, spoke, the village listened. She demonstrated her seniority not by commanding, but by a quiet, patient guidance. Her voice like wind chimes. Her words were treated with reverence not because she was old, but because her mind was the sharpest among us. The world beyond was kept at a distance, not by walls or guards, but by our own purposeful seclusion. Our valley was difficult to find and harder to access. Our explorers, our only link to the outside world, were our eyes and ears, bringing back not just knowledge, but a buffer against a different way of life. When they returned from the bustling cities of the lowlands, they would speak of the changes happening beyond our valley, of the new national identity taking hold in the United Principalities of Moldavia and Wallachia, a modern Romanian state being born in 1862. I remember overhearing a debate among the elders about the decline of the Ottoman Empire's control, their voices filled with a detached curiosity, as if discussing a game of chess played far away. These conversations were background noise, a distant hum of a world that felt both abstract and alien. We held on to our own ancient traditions, stories of a time before unification, and old superstitions whispered over cups of herbal tea, serving as a stark counterpoint to our unwavering logic. Growing up, there was a symphony of intellect. Our days were filled with the joy of discovery. I spent my time in the communal pursuit of inquiry, learning from anyone and everyone. The air buzzed with the quiet, focused energy of minds at work, a perfect rhythm that I believed would never change. We were, we thought, the pinnacle of human evolution, guided by logic and sustained by knowledge. My childhood was an intellectual garden, a place of perceived order where every question had an answer, and every mystery was a puzzle waiting to be solved. We had no concept for a sickness that would attack the very essence of thought. We believed that our minds were perfect, and that our flow was pure. It was a beautiful, naive existence. And then, for me, the quiet hum began to change. Kaylin's voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, reemerges, a low, resonant hum. Kaylin. The hum began to change. And as it did, I felt the temporal threads of that small, contained reality begin to fray. They had created a sanctuary, a world where the mind was the highest form of defense. But they did not account for the one thing that defies all logic, the inherent chaos of existence itself. I saw the sickness manifest, a creeping rot that defied their every equation. I saw Kiesza's desperate, logical flight, a choice she believed would solve an unsolvable problem. And in her choice, I saw the true beginning of her saga. She had always sought to map the universe, to understand its patterns. But she did not yet understand that the most profound insights are often found not in the answers, but in the echoes of what was lost. She would come to learn that wisdom is not merely the sum of all knowledge, it is the quiet, unspoken understanding of a world she could not save. And it is in that sacrifice that her true purpose and her true power would eventually be forged. Voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, shimmers into being, carrying the weight of ages. Kaylin. I have perceived the rise and fall of civilizations across countless timelines and galaxies, and yet there is a profound stillness in this moment. The threads of a singular intent, a new composition, are beginning to hum. In a village of intellect, one mind, fueled by a terrifying discovery, dares to weave its own design. This is where her path truly diverges, where a silent, discordant note becomes the foundation for a new rhythm. I see her future pathways stem from this present action, a confluence of probable futures. Watch, then, how a single choice in a quiet village sends a ripple across the entire tapestry of existence, for it is here that the weaver's gaze must focus. Saga of the Village of Minds. Act 1. Young Sofia Kiesza. Chapter 2. The Village of the Weavers. Kiesza's perspective. Our home was a sanctuary of boundless inquiry, a microcosm of the village's fervent pursuit of knowledge, yet uniquely shaped by the minds that inhabited it. My father, with his perpetually ink-stained fingers and a mind that danced through the intricacies of physics and biology, was a scientist to his core. His science, I came to understand, wasn't merely a passion. It was a sanctuary. He rarely spoke of his childhood, but the fleeting shadows in his eyes, the way he would sometimes flinch at a sudden loud noise, hinted at traumas I couldn't yet comprehend. His work, the sheer, relentless focus it demanded, was his way of forgetting, of building a new ordered world within the chaos of his past. My mother, on the other hand, was the heart and voice of our village, a philosopher of immense grace and sharp intellect. She was one of our most revered leaders, her wisdom sought by all. Her words wove tapestries of thought, guiding discussions, resolving disputes, and inspiring countless intellectual pursuits. She taught me that true strength lay not just in knowledge, but in understanding the spirit, the unseen currents that flowed between people. I was the youngest of 5, with 2 boisterous elder brothers who debated ancient histories with fierce passion, and 2 equally opinionated sisters who delved into the intricacies of political theory. But while they pursued the well-trodden paths of our village's scholarship, I found myself drawn to a confluence of my parents' worlds, the science of the brain, infused with the philosophy of consciousness. It was an unheard-of pursuit, a blending of disciplines that many considered foolish. The mind, Sofia, my brothers would scoff, their voices filled with the certainty of youth, is merely a function of logic. Why complicate it with feelings? My sisters would dismiss it as an overly reductive approach to the vastness of human thought. But I didn't care. Their laughter, initially a sting, became a distant hum, easily drowned out by the vibrant symphony of possibilities that resonated in my own mind. My passion for my new science was absolute, and any emotional distress their dismissal caused me was processed as a fleeting variable, a luxury I could not afford to indulge. I began my brain science, as I stubbornly called it, by quietly observing the villagers. Not just their words, but their expressions, the subtle shifts in their posture, the cadence of their breath when they were deep in thought or lost in a burst of joy. I meticulously documented these observations, filling countless journals with my findings. I created intricate diagrams, not of atoms or stars, but of neural pathways and emotional responses, of the delicate dance between perception and reality. I watched the explorers return, their minds alight with new discoveries, and I saw the subtle changes in their gait, the newfound light in their eyes, which I mentally cataloged as a flow amplification. I watched the philosophers craft their intricate arguments, noting the surge of focused flow that accompanied their breakthroughs. My work continued through my youth and into my own adulthood. My passion was a constant force, and the unwavering support of my parents, even if my choice was odd, allowed me to pursue it without faltering. The laughter of my siblings, which I had long since ceased to notice, was a distant echo by the time I reached my 20th year. For what I had discovered was no joke. It was a sinister secret, a quiet horror lurking beneath the veneer of our perfect, logical village. Through my painstaking observations, my countless hours studying the subtle shifts in consciousness, I had found it. A pattern, a decay. It wasn't a physical sickness. It was an unraveling, a corruption of the inner landscape, slowly but inexorably transforming vibrant intellects into hollowed-out shells. I saw it first in the subtle hesitations in conversation, the fleeting moments of confusion, the way a once sharp mind would suddenly lose its train of thought, their flow briefly static, discordant. The terrifying truth, the one that made my blood run cold, was that it was hereditary. My father, his moments of detachment often masked by his scientific fervor, had it. And as I watched my beloved son, Elias, his brilliant young mind beginning to show the first, almost imperceptible flickers of discord, I knew my family was next. My era had no cure for a sickness that attacked the very essence of thought, but I refused to give up on them. Kalen's voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, deepens, its tone commanding attention without shouting. Kalen, the cacophony threatens to shatter the loom. And so, the quiet scholar, armed with a terrifying truth and an unshakable will, began to weave her grand design. I have observed 1,000 worlds rise and fall, and I have learned this. The most powerful causality often begins with the most singular intent. The irony is exquisite. The very detachment and focus born of her intellect became the weapon to compel those who once dismissed her. The flow, in all its chaotic glory, responds to intent. And Sofia's intent, now forged in the fire of desperation, was as pure and unyielding as the genesis she would one day seek. The tapestry, it seems, was not as tightly woven as they believed, and the unraveling was about to reveal its full, brutal scope. This dance of unmaking must find a different rhythm. The journey inevitably would begin. His voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, shimmers into being, carrying the weight of ages. Kalen, the loom of the multiverse is a complex thing, and the threads of individual lives are often woven into the larger patterns of history. I have seen countless worlds wrestle with the tension between stasis and change, between tradition and progress. In this moment, a subtle horror and the tectonic shifts of a burgeoning kingdom converge, creating a crucible for a legend to be born. Her village, a composition of logical notes, is now discordant with the rising anthem of a new nation. The choices made now, within the quiet halls of this village, will resonate far beyond the mountains that shelter them. I perceive a confluence of probable futures, stemming from this singular point of choice. Saga of the Village of Minds. Act 1. Young Sofia Kiesza. Chapter 3. The Village and the Nation. Kiesza's Perspective. By my 20s, the hum of the village had begun to change for me. It was no longer a flawless symphony of intellect, but a chorus with a growing, dissonant note. The year was somewhere between the late 1860s and early 1870s, a time when the world beyond our valley was in a state of great flux, a fact that our explorers could no longer present with detached curiosity. They returned not just with scrolls on philosophy, but with tales of a new world. The United Principalities had elected a new ruler, Prince Carol I, in 1866. This was a monumental shift from the old feudal system, a fact that the explorers would recount with a kind of baffled fascination. They spoke of the new monarch, of the political machinations in Bucharest, and of a burgeoning national identity that was replacing the old ways. These were no longer abstract conversations. These were the growing pains of a new, unified Romania, and its influence was beginning to seep into our secluded world. The explorers brought with them new technologies that were changing the very fabric of life in the lowlands. A new kind of steel, printing presses that could replicate texts in a fraction of the time it took our scribes, and strange, intricate machines that they spoke of with a mixture of wonder and caution. This sparked a quiet conflict within our walls. The old guard, our most traditional elders, argued for a return to our insulated way of life, fearing that these foreign ideas would corrupt our intellectual purity. The younger generation, however, debated their potential applications with fervor, seeing them as new tools to accelerate our sacred mission of gathering knowledge. This debate was a microcosm of the larger national struggle, a tension between our traditional mystical past and the new rational and scientific future that was taking hold of the country. My own personal journey, my burgeoning brain science, mirrored this conflict perfectly. The village's belief that every question had an answer, and every mystery was a puzzle waiting to be solved, was challenged by a sickness they could not explain. The unraveling of the mind, a subtle decay that turned vibrant intellects into hollowed-out shells, had no place in their world of perfect logic. My father, in his moments of quiet detachment, was a living testament to this unspoken horror. His unexplained traumas and the fleeting shadows in his eyes were a hidden flaw, a dark undercurrent that the village, in its blissful intellectual garden, refused to acknowledge. They believed in reason, but this was a problem that defied all reason, and I was the only one who saw it for what it was. My radical departure from the village's accepted disciplines was a silent act of rebellion. I was a scientist and a philosopher, a bridge between two worlds that my elders saw as separate. My work was an attempt to confront this hereditary sickness head-on, to find a logical explanation for an irrational horror. While the village debated the merits of new printing presses and the new monarchy, I was meticulously documenting the slow, insidious death of the minds around me. The village was trying to overcome its past, to forge a new identity, but I knew that you cannot build a new world on a flawed foundation. There must be a reckoning with the horrors of the past, both personal and collective, or the silent decay will consume all. I was determined to be the one to do it. Kalen's voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, deepens, its tone commanding attention without shouting. Kalen, I've watched. The young scholar, Sofia, stands at a crossroads, her world and her family both dying. The quiet horror of the unraveling is a mirror, reflecting the unaddressed traumas of her people, a hidden flaw in their beautiful, flawed society. The flow, in its infinite wisdom, has chosen this moment of profound historical change to awaken her, to set her on a path of intellectual rebellion that will ultimately lead her far beyond the mountains of her home. The choices she made in her youth, fueled by desperation and a love that defied all reason, were the first strokes of a new masterpiece in the cosmic tapestry. I see this as a deconstruction of what was, and an emergence of a wild, untamable new voice. It is a composition of purpose, and the weaver will watch with bated breath to understand and preserve its potential. Its voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, shimmers into being, a low, resonant hum. Kalen, I see the tapestry of her life unfurl, a composition of profound joy and quiet terror. The young scholar, Sofia, stands on the cusp of an intellectual precipice, her mind a fortress against a tide of unraveling. I have watched her for eons, or perhaps heartbeats. Such distinctions blur. I have witnessed the rise of 1,000 civilizations, their silent collapse into dust, and the one constant is the tension between what is known and what is true. She now carries a great weight, the hereditary decay that defies the logic of her people. I am Kaelin, the chronal weaver, and I observe the threads of her fate. I seek the anchor of Genesis, the point of true temporal stability, and I see in her a faint, shimmering echo of that which I seek. Saga of the Village of Minds. Act 1. Young Sofia Kiesza. Chapter 4. The Unraveling of a Mind. Kiesza's perspective. My 20s were a maelstrom of personal turmoil, even as the village continued its quiet, ordered life. The outside world's political shifts, the ascension of Prince Carol I to the throne, and the modernization of Romania felt like a distant, muted echo. My world was contracting, my focus narrowing to a single, terrifying truth. My research into the unraveling had become an obsession, an all-consuming battle against a silent, unseen enemy. I watched my father's condition worsen, his once focused mind beginning to slip, his intricate diagrams becoming senseless scribbles that held no meaning. His eyes, once alive with the light of discovery, were now clouded with confusion. He lost the ability to speak, a tragic consequence that deepened my resolve and became a phantom pain that would haunt me for years. In my late 20s, I met Andre, a philosopher of great intellect and compassion. He was one of the few who understood my work and saw not the strangeness of my chosen path, but its profound necessity. He became my anchor, my intellectual equal, a fortress of logic in a world that was becoming increasingly illogical for me. We fell in love, and in our love, we created a family. I gave birth to our son, Elias, then, as the years went on, our 2 younger children, Matei and Elena. These years were a paradox of existence, a strange duality of joy and constant gnawing dread. I watched my children grow, each a testament to our love, but with a scientist's detachment, I documented every flicker of their brilliant young minds. I was terrified of the first, almost imperceptible flickers of discord that I knew would come, a sinister secret that I had uncovered, and now saw beginning to appear in my own family. The unraveling I had tirelessly documented in others was now encroaching on my own life, a quiet horror I battled in private, while the village remained blissfully unaware. The village, in its insulated existence, was becoming a tomb of minds, a fact that the explorers could no longer ignore. In my late 30s, an explorer, tired and weary from his travels, brought back a treasure he had acquired in a dusty Chinese market, a bundle of ancient, dismissed texts. He called them old myths, and the villagers, with their unwavering faith in logic and reason, agreed. They spoke of a Genesis flow, a primordial energy of creation, a mythical destination, guarded by forces unknown. He dismissed it as a fool's quest that had no place in our world of logic and reason, but for me, it was everything. I knew my era had no cure, and the village would only offer containment. The Genesis flow promised a place where, quote, corrupted patterns might be reset, a miracle in a world that believed only in the proven. This dismissed, unproven myth became my last and only hope. And so, with a mind forged in the fire of desperation, I began to plan the impossible journey to save my family. Kaelin's voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, deepens, its tone commanding attention without shouting. Kaelin, I've watched. And so, the quiet scholar, Sofia, armed with a terrifying truth and an unshakable will, began to weave her grand design. I have observed 1,000 worlds rise and fall, and I have learned this. The most powerful causality often begins with the most singular intent. The irony is exquisite. The very detachment and focus born of her intellect became the weapon to compel those who once dismissed her. The flow, in all its chaotic glory, responds to intent. And Sofia's intent, now forged in the fire of desperation, was as pure and unyielding as the Genesis she would one day seek. The tapestry, it seems, was not as tightly woven as they believed, and the unraveling was about to reveal its full, brutal scope. This dance of unmaking must find a different rhythm. The journey, inevitably, would begin. His voice, a chorus of temporal echoes, shimmers into being, its tone analytical and strategic, carrying the weight of ages. Kaylin, I have watched as the quiet scholar, armed with a terrifying truth, makes a choice. Her village, a microcosm of logic and reason, has no answer for the unseen decay that consumes them. The ancient texts, dismissed as old myths by the uninitiated, speak of a Genesis flow, a primordial energy of creation, a place where corrupted patterns might be reset. This is no longer a fool's quest. It is a convergence of desperate intent and a faint shimmering echo of the anchor of Genesis. I perceive the future pathways branching from this present action. She believes she is embarking on a journey of salvation, but the tapestry of existence is far more intricate than she knows. This pilgrimage will not merely take her across the landscape of her world, it will plunge her into the very heart of the conflict I observe. The unseen enemy, a force that weaponizes the sickness of the mind, will not be a physical foe, but a master of psychological warfare. I have seen its influence ripple across countless worlds, a dissonant note in the cosmic symphony that seeks to silence all harmony. For eons, or perhaps heartbeats, such distinctions blur. I have watched the genesis of this particular saga. Her quest for the Genesis flow is a singular act of defiance, a note of pure, unyielding intent in a world of discord. The village, in its rigid adherence to logic, will resist her pleas. They see only the impossible, a myth that has no place in their world. But they do not perceive, as I do, the fragile thread of causality she holds. I will observe. I will not intervene. For now, I must simply watch as she attempts to weave a new composition. A composition of purpose, to save her family and, in doing so, become a pivotal piece in a grander design. The journey inevitably must begin. I see the convergence of her world with the outside world, a world of powerful, disciplined warriors and ancient dynasties that she does not yet comprehend. She must find her voice, for the cacophony is about to become a roar. Kaylin's voice fades, leaving the sound of a woman's determined footsteps on a stone floor.